Well, the year is 2021, where fiction has apparently become
reality.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie getting ready for his afternoon nap in the car. Yes, there has been a verdict in the Chauvin trial. After 10 hours of deliberation, the jury came down with a unanimous verdict on all 3 counts. And barely a week later, there seem to be problems with at least one of the jury members. From the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness.
Can you define irony?
Photo of Chauvin juror wearing BLM t-shirt at march raises questions of impartiality, experts say. Now, this story has been reported pretty much everywhere, from Washington Post to Fox News, but I'm picking one of the more left-leaning news sites so that nobody accuses me of reading from a site with right-wing bias. And in reading from a website with a notorious left-wing bias, I love how they have to qualify it as experts are saying that one of the jury members might be slightly biased because they were caught on camera wearing a BLM t-shirt and hat, incidentally. It's not that that photograph raises objective concerns of partiality. It's only according to experts that that photo raises questions of partiality, but let's get into the article itself. A photo that has surfaced in recent days of a juror in the murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has prompted questions about the juror's impartiality, legal experts say. The photo, shared by several news sites, shows Brandon Mitchell, a 31-year-old high school basketball coach in Minneapolis, standing next to 2 relatives wearing a black t-shirt with a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. with the words, quote, "Get your knee off our necks," end quote, as well as a black baseball cap with the letters, quote, "BLM," end quote, for Black Lives Matter. For those of you who may not have already seen the photograph, I'm going to flash the photograph in a second so you can come to your own conclusions. We will get into the context of that photograph a little later on in this vlog, but this is the photograph. Also, before anyone comes to any conclusions, you should also know that Brandon Mitchell was one of the jury members, probably the first jury member after conviction to start doing the rounds
on media.
Even before the existence of this photograph was discovered, it was already questionable and, dare I say, suspect that one of the jury members immediately after the conviction, before sentencing, was already doing the rounds on media. But if that alone didn't raise questions of potential partiality of a jury member, the existence of this photograph is probably going to eliminate all doubt for anyone with a remotely open mind. So with that said, let's get into the context of the photograph and then discuss some other issues that are going to be very interesting as relates to the consequences of this discovery. On Monday, Mitchell told the Star Tribune that the photo was posted on social media by his uncle in DC last August during the commemoration of Martin Luther King Jr.'s, quote, "I have a dream," end quote, speech from 1963. He defended his attendance, saying it was not a march for George Floyd, according to the Star Tribune. Okay, so purportedly not a march for George Floyd. Even if we take that for granted, it may be a distinction without a difference, but some might not believe that explanation, given the fact that his shirt says "Take your knees off our neck," which ostensibly is a clear reference to George Floyd's death, even if it is in a different context. But when I say that this may be a distinction without a difference, it goes all the way back to the jury questionnaire that this jury member filled out prior to being approved as a member of the jury. Mitchell, who is black, is one of the 12 jurors who convicted Chauvin of murder and manslaughter in the death of Floyd on April 20, nearly a year after a viral video of the black man pinned beneath the white officer's knee sparked protests across the country and forced a national reckoning on race and policing. Efforts to reach Mitchell for comment were unsuccessful. When questioned about his attendance at the demonstration in Washington last year, Mitchell told the Star Tribune that it was an, quote, "opportunity to be around thousands and thousands of black people," end quote, and, quote, "to be a part of something," end quote. And that could reasonably be interpreted to some as qualifying as activism that could taint the required objectivity of any jury member had it been disclosed, and that's where we really get into problems in this case. As part of the jury selection, the candidates were required to fill out a 14-page questionnaire asking about a wide range of topics, including race and policing, as well as education levels, professional experience, and hobbies in order to gather in-depth knowledge about the candidates. It also asked prospective jurors about information they had on Floyd, their opinions on the Black Lives Matter movement, and more specifically, if they had attended protests or demonstrations against police brutality. According to the Star Tribune, Mitchell said he responded, quote, "no," end quote, to a question asking if he or anyone close to him had ever participated in protests over police use of force or police brutality. Now, this will not be news for those of you who have been around the channel for long enough, but if you are new to the channel, you may not know that a couple of months ago, I did a vlog breaking down the questionnaire in this case. I went through some of the most important questions on that questionnaire, so I'm going to flash a clip from that vlog in this vlog Vlawg just to give you an idea as to what the questionnaire itself said. But let's just go over this questionnaire so we can see some of the questions that were asked to these prospective jurors. Please answer all of the questions as completely and honestly as you can. As you answer these questions, please keep in mind that there are no right or wrong answers, but you are answering these questions under oath, and you will be required to verify under oath that your answers are true when you come to court for the first time. Then we get into a question that I suspect would be determinate for either side depending on the answer. How favorable or unfavorable are you about Black Lives Matter? And how favorable or unfavorable are you about Blue Lives Matter? I mean, the questions are self-explanatory. The only real issue is going to be whether or not the potential jury members are going to be honest, whether or not they've made social media posts that are going to come back to haunt them if they answer the questions untruthfully or incorrectly. Well, that excerpt has aged well, and while I'd like to pretend that it was prophetic, it was just so darn obvious from day one that if someone were not going to be entirely honest on this questionnaire, it would come back to bite them in the butt. It would appear that this jury member was not entirely forthright in his answers to these questions. It is coming back to bite him in the butt, but let's just focus on two questions in particular. Did you or someone close to you participate in any of the demonstrations or marches against police brutality that took place in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death? Here, even taking Brandon Mitchell at his word as to the explanation about that photograph, one could see how he could honestly answer no to this question because the protest that he attended was in DC and not Minneapolis and did not relate specifically to George Floyd. So giving Brandon Mitchell the benefit of the doubt, one could understand how he could truthfully answer no to this question, but it's the next question that's going to pose a much bigger problem. Other than what you have already described above, have you or anyone close to you participated in protests about police use of force or police brutality? And here is where Brandon Mitchell is going to have a pretty big problem, even if we give him the benefit of the doubt. Even if that protest that he attended was in Washington, D.C., it is quite clear from his shirt that it is referencing police brutality. So if he did indeed answer no to this question, as he seems to have responded to the Tribune, he's going to have a big problem, and this may cause very big problems for the trial itself. A lot of people are hypothesizing that this could be grounds for a mistrial, except a verdict has already been reached. A verdict has already been reached, except Chauvin has not yet been sentenced, so the trial is still ongoing. From what I understand and from what has been explained to me, this could, in theory and in practice, justify what is referred to as a motion for a new trial. Jury consultant Alan Turkheimer said it is likely that Chauvin's defense attorney Eric J. Nelson will use this information to push for an appeal, but argued that the photo itself would not be enough to dismiss the conviction. Turkheimer added, however, that Mitchell's alleged denial that he was involved in any protests could prompt Judge Peter A. Cahill to bring Mitchell in for further questioning to assess whether he was untruthful or worse, if he had an agenda or a predetermined verdict in mind. Untruthful or having a predetermined verdict in mind? This is straight out of the movie Runaway Jury, and I remember watching that movie thinking how preposterous that plot was, totally outlandish, could never happen, and lo and behold, we have that in real life to a less exaggerated degree. Spoiler alert for anybody who has not yet seen the movie Runaway Jury or read the book. The movie stars John Cusack, what's her name, Rachel Weisz, and Gene Hackman. It was a preposterous movie, or so I thought at the time, where one of the jury members actually lied about his identity. This is in the context of a gun manufacturer liability case. One of the jury members, John Cusack, actually conceals his identity, lies about his history in order to get on the jury, and it turns out, lo and behold, that his sister was killed by a firearm in high school. The family tried to sue the firearm manufacturers to no avail, so he lied in order to get onto the jury to swing the jury the way he wanted. Totally outlandish, totally preposterous, too ridiculous to be believable, but lo and behold, what do we have here? A member of the jury lying about their history, lying about their experience, or at the very least, forgetting a very material part of it in order to get onto the jury to steer it the way they want. Runaway Jury was either this reality on steroids, or this reality is Runaway Jury on sedatives. Either way, this is a little too close to reality imitating art. But let's just finish this vlog up by hearing what jury consultant Alan Turkheimer has to say. Quote, "That could change the outcome of things. If there's anything that makes him seem that he was not forthcoming, it could be an avenue for the judge to reconsider the case," end quote, Turkheimer said. Adding it is a, quote, "high standard," end quote, that Cahill would consider, since he is probably not inclined to toss the entire trial and start from square one. And what does a civil rights attorney have to say about this entire debacle? Civil rights attorney Brian Dunn argued that while the photo is, quote, "undeniably suggestive of a possible bias in this juror," end quote, the critical inquiry will be to determine whether the juror, quote, "lied about or failed to provide complete answers on whether he has engaged in public activism or whether he has any affiliations with BLM that go beyond the mere wearing of the hat," end quote. Dunn said this will involve a careful review of this juror's questionnaire as well as the statements made in open court. Quote, "If it is determined that the juror did not provide full disclosure to the defense, the question then becomes whether this lack of candor violated Mr. Chauvin's right to a fair trial, end quote. Dunn said, adding that this would require a much more detailed inquiry, typically addressed by an extensive evidentiary hearing. And going back to other things this juror may have said and done, including the fact that he was the first jury member to speak publicly after the conviction, the article ends as follows. Last week, Mitchell was the first juror to publicly speak about the historic trial that earned world attention. In interviews with several media outlets, Mitchell shared details about the experience of being a juror, the factors that proved to be decisive in Chauvin's conviction, and the impact that the trial had on him. Quote, "It wasn't pressure to come to a guilty verdict," end quote, Mitchell told Gayle King on CBS this morning. Quote, "We stressed about the simple fact that every day we had to come in and watch a black man die. That alone was stressful enough," end quote. Now, I don't know that the statements Mitchell made out of court are going to be relevant or admissible in court, but they are certainly going to be relevant and admissible in the court of public opinion. And as far as the court of public opinion is concerned, I think it's going to be relatively undeniable that this particular juror came in with a certain leaning, a certain partiality. The only question is going to be what consequences that might have on the trial. To be seen, to be determined, to be discussed during our next live stream with Robert Barnes. And with that said, if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm.
You can eat that?
If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment. We've got PayPal, Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube membership. We've got merch, anti-media. Robert Barnes and I do weekly live streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams every Wednesday with a guest called The Sidebar. We also have a page on Locals. It is called
VivaFrei.locals.com.
All of my content is also on Rumble, so you can follow me there. But more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well. And now you know your vlog. Peace out.